The final bell rang, and the hallways burst into life as students flooded out of their classrooms. Among the crowd, Jeremiah Daniels walked with his head down, hoping to avoid the stares and whispers he'd grown accustomed to. It wasn't that he was disliked exactly, just overlooked, brushed off, and misunderstood. He had been at Westlake High for 3 years, but it still felt like he was on the outside looking in. Jeremiah wanted nothing more than to fit in. He'd studied the unspoken rules, wearing clothes like his classmates, adopting their mannerisms, and nodding along when someone made a joke he didn't quite understand. And yet, nothing he did ever seemed to close the gap between him and the others. He'd walk into rooms, and the conversation would subtly shift, leaving him on the periphery, as if he wasn't even there. Most days he could let it slide, but it all changed on the day of the incident in Mr. Kellerman's class. Jeremiah had worked hard on his group project, taking the lead as his other teammates coasted along. On presentation day, he waited eagerly for his group's turn, holding his carefully written notes, his palms clammy with nerves. But right before they started, Tommy, one of his classmates, nudged him. "Hey, why don't you let us handle this one, Jer?" Tommy said in a half-whisper. Jeremiah felt his stomach sink. He tried to push down the knot of frustration, whispering back, "I did a lot of the research, though. I was planning to." Yeah, but we'll handle it. Don't stress," Tommy insisted, turning his back and not waiting for a response. Jeremiah watched as Tommy took the lead, barely giving him a chance to speak. It was as though his contribution was invisible. After class, as they filed out, Mr. Kellerman shot him a disapproving look. "You seem distracted, Jeremiah. You need to participate more if you want to keep your grades up," he remarked coldly. The sting of injustice flared within him, but Jeremiah kept his head down, swallowing his words. The final straw came 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon in the lunchroom. Jeremiah had been sitting with his tray, trying to stay out of the usual cliques. He glanced over at the table where Tommy and his friends laughed loudly, his heart aching with a quiet longing to join in. Suddenly, a commotion broke out near his table. A football player, Jared, was picking on a freshman, a quiet boy with wire-rimmed glasses. Without thinking, Jeremiah stood up and called out, "Leave him alone, man." He didn't do anything. The cafeteria hushed as Jared turned his gaze to Jeremiah, a mocking grin stretching across his face. "Oh, look who's trying to play hero now," he sneered. Before Jeremiah knew it, a teacher was at his side, frowning. "Jeremiah, please come with me," she said, her voice cold and authoritative. He followed her to the office, his mind racing, wondering if he'd somehow overstepped. In the principal's office, Mr. Reeves sat behind his desk, looking over Jeremiah with that same disapproving expression he'd seen a dozen times. "Jeremiah, we have received several complaints about your behavior in recent weeks," he began. "It seems you're struggling to adapt to the environment here." Jeremiah's heart pounded in his chest. "Sir, I was just trying to stand up for someone who was being bullied," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Reeves didn't even look up. "Regardless, you were disruptive. This is the second time this semester you've been in the office for similar issues. I have no choice but to suspend you." "Suspended?" Jeremiah felt his mouth go dry. "But I haven't done anything wrong. Other students do way worse and don't get sent here. I just stood up for someone." Mr. Reeves met his gaze, his eyes cold and unyielding. "Jeremiah, if you're having trouble integrating, that's not my concern. We can't keep tolerating disturbances in this school." As Jeremiah walked out of the office, a hollow ache filled him. He passed the same groups of white students he'd spent years trying to fit in with, realizing, finally, that he could bend and mold himself into whatever shape they expected, and still, he would be seen as a troublemaker. For the first time, he stopped caring about their approval. No matter how hard he tried, the system was rigged against him. Jeremiah's suspension was a turning point. Instead of dwelling on the injustice, he decided he wouldn't let it define his future. With the unwavering support of his mother, who reminded him daily of his worth and resilience, he used the time to reflect on his goals. Despite the setback, he graduated, earning a scholarship to a local community college. College was a revelation. For the first time, Jeremiah found himself in a space where he could truly explore his interests without judgment. He threw himself into his studies, becoming particularly drawn to business and entrepreneurship. Driven by his experiences in high school, he was determined to build a life where he could lift others who, like him, had been sidelined or written off. After graduating, he spent several years working various jobs, saving up every dollar he could. His dream was to start his own business, something he could call his own, something that would help others find their way out of the challenges he'd known too well. One day, as he was flipping through an old box of high school memorabilia, a name jumped out at him: Marcus Green. Marcus had been his closest friend in elementary school, back before he transferred to a different district. They had lost touch, but Marcus had been like a brother to him in those early years, and Jeremiah wondered what he might be up to now. Out of curiosity, he searched for Marcus online. To his surprise, Marcus was now a successful venture capitalist in New York City. They hadn't spoken in over a decade, but Jeremiah felt an urge to reach out. He sent a message, not expecting much, simply reminiscing about their childhood memories and sharing a bit about his life. A day later, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was Marcus. Jeremiah. Marcus' voice was warm and full of excitement. "I can't believe it's really you. I was just reading your message, and man, I can't tell you how glad I am to hear from you." They caught up over the phone, sharing stories of their separate journeys. Marcus was fascinated by Jeremiah's story of resilience and his entrepreneurial dreams. After an hour-long conversation, Marcus proposed an idea that left Jeremiah stunned. "Listen, Jeremiah," Marcus said, "I think what you're trying to build is amazing, and it's something the world needs. I've been looking to invest in ventures that make a difference. How would you feel about bringing your business idea to life with my support?" Jeremiah was speechless. The boy who once felt he would never be given a fair chance was now looking at the opportunity of a lifetime, thanks to an old friend who had not only remembered him, but wanted to help him succeed. Within a few months, they laid the groundwork for a consulting firm called Phoenix Pathways, aimed at empowering underrepresented communities with the skills and resources to succeed in the professional world. The business thrived, with Marcus bringing his financial acumen and network, and Jeremiah offering his first-hand experience and passion. Together, they forged a company that not only grew rapidly, but also made a genuine impact in the lives of thousands. Years later, as he accepted an award for his contributions to social entrepreneurship, Jeremiah thought back to that dark day in high school, sitting in the principal's office, feeling like the world was against him. Now, he stood tall, knowing that, against all odds, he had not only broken through the barriers, but had created pathways for others to follow. As the applause filled the room, he looked out at Marcus in the crowd, his friend and partner who had given him the opportunity to rise above the odds and who, unbeknownst to him, had been inspired by Jeremiah's strength all along.